The Warp, also known as the Immaterium and the Sea of Souls, is a plane of existence comprised entirely out of psychic energy, which exists as a parallel to the material realm. Despite typically being confined to an entirely separate dimension, the energies of the Warp are capable of manifesting throughout the material realm in a number of different ways. The Warp can bleed into real space through tears that appear within the very fabric of reality, such as warp storms and warp rifts, or even by utilizing the minds of psychically sensitive individuals known as psychers as a gateway between realms. While the Warp may be, for lack of a better term, a storm-racked sea of psychic energies, there exist a great many number of etheric life forms that call this realm home. Such beings include the insidious entities known as the Enslavers, the parasitic shape-shifting creatures known as vampires, and a host of other beings known by the catch-all terms of gods and demons. While countless numbers of lesser gods exist within the Warp, the most powerful of these are those that are known as the Chaos Gods. These gods are Khorne, the god of blood and slaughter; Tzeentch, the god of magic and change; Nurgle, the god of disease and decay; and Slaanesh, the god of pleasure and pain. The Chaos Gods are beings that feed upon the passions and souls of mortals that exist within the material universe, and thus, despite their great power, they are completely dependent upon the emotions and prayers of sentient creatures. Each of these gods is even able to use a portion of their collective power to create a variety of demonic minions, both great and small. Should a follower of the Chaos Gods please their patron deity to a significant degree, then they may eventually be granted immortality as a reward, becoming transformed into a powerful warp entity known as a Demon Prince. Over the millennia, numerous cults dedicated to the Chaos Gods have emerged throughout the galaxy, with many of these cultists seeking to obtain the ultimate prize of demonhood through their service to their Dark Masters. While the majority of documented Chaos cults are those comprised of humans, humanity is far from being the only species that is capable of falling to the corrupting influence of chaos. Some Xenos may submit to chaotic corruption unintentionally or accidentally, as shown with Pormalkaor of the Tau Empire's Water Caste, who became possessed by a demon of Tzeentch after coming into direct contact with an Imperial Gellerfield generator. In other races, the worship of chaos will become, over time, more and more socially acceptable before eventually becoming ingrained into their very society and culture, as shown with the species known as the Lair, whose entire civilization was focused upon the worship of Slaanesh. And yet, while numerous races throughout the galaxy are capable of succumbing to chaotic corruption, there exists one race in particular that boasts a surprisingly high resilience to the temptations of chaos: the Orcs. The Orcs are an incredibly violent and warlike Xenos race, whose presence is felt across the vast expanse of the galaxy. To the Orcs, war is a way of life, and the race will battle against anyone simply for the prospect of a good fight, regardless of whether their opponents are human, Eldari, Tau, or even other Orcs. Despite appearing as primitive, barbaric, and crude, the Orcs are one of the galaxy's most successful races, and have mastered various potent, if somewhat unstable, technologies. The Orc religion is focused upon the worship of two gods: Gork, who is described as brutal yet cunning, and Mork, who is said to be cunning yet brutal. While some Orcs will favour the worship of Gork over Mork, and vice versa, becoming known respectively as Gorkers and Morkers, in the grand scheme of things, it matters little as to which of these gods is worshipped, as both epitomise what it truly means to be an Orc in their own way. Somewhat uniquely, Orcs have been shown to be a race that is incredibly difficult for demonic entities to manipulate and corrupt. This is due to the fact that both the souls and personalities of the Orcs are said to be far more robust and resistant when compared to other races, sporting virtually no weaknesses for the powers of chaos to exploit. Should a demon attempt to possess an orc, the demon will oftentimes be incapable of assuming direct control over their host's body, resulting in not only the demon becoming effectively a prisoner within the orc's body, but also granting their host an exceptional increase in power. The only signs to suggest that an orc may have become possessed by a demonic entity, aside from their enhanced power, are the odd instances of inexplicable poltergeist activity, prolonged bouts of wailing, or the fact that the orc will have in-depth conversations with himself. So given their natural resistance to the temptations of chaos, can orcs truly become corrupted by the ruinous powers? While orcs may prove to be far more resistant to the effects of demonic possession in comparison to other races, this does not mean that they are completely immune. For example, within the graphic novel Blood Quest, the orc warlord known as Garshul the Destroyer was revealed to have been a host for a powerful demonic entity. This chaotically corrupted orc warlord not only commanded a sizable orc horde, but also a substantial number of traitor legion Astartes. With these forces at his command, Garshul intended to launch his own Black Crusade against the Imperium. However, the orc would eventually be slain by the exiled Blood Angels, Brother Cloten and Captain Leonatos, although the orc's severed head would taunt the Blood Angels before it was obliterated by a bolt round. Despite this, it remains unclear if Garshul willingly allowed himself to become possessed or not. Other orcs have been known to fall to chaotic corruption due to a simple case of mistaken identity. As shown within the 3rd edition Demon Hunter's Codex, orcs can sometimes fall to the worship of Nurgle due to discovering imagery or artifacts depicting the Plague God, incorrectly believing that these representations of Nurgle are instead images of Gork or Mork. This confusion may stem from the fact that one of the most commonly depicted forms of Nurgle is that of a gargantuan, bloated, green-skinned figure, which is somewhat similar to how the orcs view their own gods. While their worship may very well be inadvertent, Nurgle has been known to send his demonic legions to aid his new followers should they ever come under assault. Orcs have even been known to fall under the thrall of chaos in situations where the influence of the dark gods has become so incredibly potent that it corrupts everything within its immediate vicinity. Within the novella The Bloodied Rose, a number of orcs would fall under the influence of Khorne upon the tainted world of Lautis. These orcs were shown to have not only mutilated their bodies and anoint their heads with the rune of Khorne, but appear to have become part of a cult whose members not only included other orcs, but also humans, as detailed with the following passage.
Behind the orc came a second greenskin, this one smaller and slighter. Both creatures had great carved scars in their hides, spikes of brass embedded in their skin. And then, behind them, came a woman in the garb of the township, her clothing torn and bloody, her eyes torn out. She carried an orcish axe in one thin hand. More figures closed in behind her, their flesh ripped open, their faces scarred with staples and stitches, and all of them stared at the sisters, with teeth bared and gazes that burned like fire, like fanaticism. Every one of them, orcs included, had the same symbol upon the flesh of their foreheads, etched there in dripping black fluid. Khorne.
This cult, along with the source of chaotic corruption upon the world, would ultimately be purged by the Adepta Sororitas. But these instances of orcs falling to the taint of chaos appear to be more unintentional as opposed to the orcs deliberately turning to the worship of the chaos gods. So what instances could drive an orc to willingly embrace the ruinous powers? According to the book Freebooters, worship of the chaos gods is one of the few things that are not tolerated by orcs who are considered to be reasonable or sane. Even amongst other orcs, those who become followers of chaos are looked upon with suspicion and disdain due to not being proper orky. As such, it would be feasible to suspect that any orcs who do willingly turn to the worship of chaos will come from the ranks of freebooter bands, orcs who have eschewed all allegiances to their clan or tribe to lead the life of wandering mercenaries. Due to their lifestyles and their unusual quirks, these particular orcs are often viewed by the other members of their race as being strange and un-orky. Should an orc choose to actively pledge themselves to one of the dark gods, then it's highly likely that their patron god of choice will be that of Khorne. This is due to Khorne being a god that epitomizes violence, bloodshed, and carnage. As mentioned earlier, orcs view war and conflict as an everyday fixture of their lives, regarding it with the same awe and reverence that a priest may bestow upon their religion. Fighting is also one of the few acts that bring an orc genuine joy and pleasure. Because of this, an orc is more likely to turn to the worship of Khorne to sate their desires as opposed to Slaanesh, despite Slaanesh being a god epitomizing hedonism and pleasure. The idea that orcs would be drawn to the worship of Khorne above the other chaos gods is also flat out stated within the Freebooters supplement, with one such example of a Khornate orc warband being the Storm Boys of Khorne. This band of orcs turned to the worship of the blood god due to Khorne epitomizing the martial values that these particular Storm Boys held dear, as well as providing them with a life full of constant bloodshed and battle. Another, more notorious group of orcs, however, would not only draw the gaze of the blood god, but in fact gain his approval, a tribe led by a war boss known as Tusker the Demon Killer. Tusker would lead his warband into the warp space rift known as the Eye of Terror for the sole purpose of battling against the demonic entities of the warp. Tusker and his warriors would run rampant throughout ice space, laying waste to a number of demon worlds in the process before their ship crash-landed upon a world that belonged to a Khornate demon prince known simply as the Blood Prince. While the orcs would battle fiercely against their demonic adversaries, they would eventually be overrun and slain by the Blood Prince's armies. Despite this, Khorne was so impressed by the carnage wrought by the orcs, as well as the insatiable lust for battle that drew them into the Blood God's domain, that he would claim the souls of Tusker and his followers. The Blood God would then proceed to resurrect the orcs on a daily basis to forever battle against his demonic generals for his own amusement, within the shadow of his brass citadel. The orcs themselves became extremely happy with this turn of events, as they finally found a battle that would never end. While Khorne may be the most likely member of the chaotic pantheon to gain the adoration of orcs, it has been suggested that those orcs who fall to the embrace of chaos may be just as willing to turn to the worship of Nurgle, due to the plague god being big and green, much like an orc, or even become the followers of a demon prince that had formerly been an orc prior to their apotheosis. Regardless, should the Imperium of Man discover a tribe of orcs devoted to the Chaos Gods, then the Emperor's followers will stop at nothing to ensure that such abominations are erased from existence. What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.